Nothing is hidden, but it will be made clear. Nothing secret, but it will be known and brought to light. We are living in a time when things are coming to light. There is nothing new in what has been happening over the last 3 or 4 weeks, in the sense that it has been there. It's just that it's now being made manifest. That is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. If we believe in providence and in the mystical body, which to be effective has to be clean. But it is also something that has been foreseen. We discover history by the second. God sees it and has always seen it. He has also seen what could be, for from every event comes a consequent event, but there could be also another chain if in one event another choice is made. Les futuribles, the futurables in philosophy, what could have been. It's a whole other virtual reality, and some points in time contain that. Think, for instance, of a young man or a young woman who could at one point get involved in a relationship which could end in a family, or a young man or a woman who could get involved with a vocation, or one already in a vocation who could halfway through or even afterwards turn back. They're all things which impact on history. But here, for a moment, I'd like to pause at a wider picture of history foreseen. If we believe that God is knowledge, God is wisdom, God is power, and that God is outside time as we know it, then it is logical that he can foresee. It is the basis of prophecy. Are you aware that on the 13th of October, notice the date, 1973, which was the actual anniversary of the great miracle of Fatima, we have this going on in a different continent. It's what Our Lady was saying in Japan at Akita to a very beautiful holy maid, Sister Agnes Saskatchewan. As I told you, says the Virgin herself, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. Notice the if bit. These prophecies are conditional, but they do echo also conditions laid down at Fatima, if you remember the details. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, such as one will never have seen before. It was yesterday the feast day of St. Pio of Pietrelcina, who is known to have seen a lot, had knowledge and some kind of vision of the coming 3 days of darkness, for instance. So this bit is not surprising in that context. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priests nor faithful. The survivors will find themselves so desolate that they will envy the dead. The only alms which will remain for you will be the rosary and the sign left by my son. always, by the way, make well the sign of the cross. It is the instrument that saved us and on which our dear Saviour died and suffered terribly. Each day, this is our Blessed Lady herself saying this, recite the prayers of the Rosary. Now, by the way, that's the one thing that was said 6 times at Fatima. Each apparition at Fatima asks for that. And if we're too busy to do that, we're too busy. There's something out of order. 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 With the Rosary, pray for the Pope. Notice that bit. The bishops and the priests. Now this is coming close to the bone. One can see just with the human eye history as it evolves and unfolds itself and say, oh, that's just social dynamics. But is it? The work, says Our Lady, of the devil will infiltrate even into the church. It was actually fairly soon after already blessed, now soon to be Saint Paul VI had uttered that famous, very alarming phrase in 1972, the smoke of Satan has infiltrated the temple of God by some fissure. So, notice this bit and ask yourself, does it correspond to something that we're seeing before our eyes? The work of the devil will infiltrate even into the church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals and bishops against other bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres. The church and altars will be vandalized. The church will be full of those who accept compromises. And the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord. I've just had a shock from my own former community that I think it was that very young priest who met you at the station, the tall one. Well, he's just got involved in a relationship. A child is on the way. He sang the High Mass on the 15th of August and discreetly disappeared. He was also an exorcist named by the bishop, a very good man, and the last to be expected in that situation. We wanted him actually to be prior. Anyway, that's history. But it's the good that are the greatest nuisance to old Nick, and so they're the most attacked, either through secondary causes or head on. So, he will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord. The demon will rage especially against souls consecrated to God. The thought of the loss of so many souls is the cause of my sadness. Now that's explaining why she's weeping. These tears coming from the wooden statue were analysed and they were real human tears. If sins increase in number and gravity, there will no longer be pardon for them. Now, it is interesting that Pope Benedict, when talking to the ambassador, I think for the Philippines, possibly that of Japan, it doesn't really matter, but he did say, and is known to have said, the message of Fatima and that of Akita are the same. The message, therefore, of Fatima, even the third secret, implying that, can be heard at Akita. It's, of course, approved. Now, I want to make a jump in time. Normally, one jumps in time from A to B. Now, I'm going from B to A, deliberately. If God is outside time, then it matters little whether it's 1973 or the 1500s. Listen to this. During the 15th and 16th centuries, Our Lady of Good Success appeared in Quito, Ecuador, to a Spanish nun whose little-known but extraordinary life has a direct connection with our days. This, by the way, is also approved. The Pope's infallibility will be declared a dogma of faith by the same Pope chosen to proclaim the dogma of the mystery of my Immaculate Conception, Blessed Pius IX, Pio Nono. He will be persecuted and imprisoned in the Vatican through the usurpation of the pontifical states and through the malice, envy and avarice of an earthly monarch. Unbridled passions will give way to a total corruption of customs, because Satan will reign. Now look, this is actually unbelievable with regard to the accuracy, because Masonry just didn't exist and was even thought of at this stage. Unbridled passions will give way to a total corruption of customs, because Satan will reign through the Masonic sects, targeting the children in particular to ensure general corruption. And by the way, I'm just learning now how massively the tentacles of this dark Masonic world are out there. They're all over the place. I was just talking to a good young sergeant in the Gardaí the other day, who was big into his faith, went up against the Freemasons in there. There's some very good stuff on it in French. And by the way, France is one of the countries where it's been strongest. And we know that when it came to the ousting of the religious from France over a century ago now, Satan was directly involved, and he was appearing to them. He was actually telling them the next step. I think it was the Cantorion Lodge. Unhappy, the children of those times, this is our times now, seldom will they receive the sacraments of baptism and confirmation. As for the sacrament of penance, they will confess only while attending Catholic schools, which the devil will do his utmost to destroy by means of persons in authority. Now, it is known that to get to certain places one has to be a Freemason. The same will occur with Holy Communion. Oh, how it hurts me to tell you, there will be many and enormous public and hidden sacrileges. In those times, the sacrament of extreme unction will be largely ignored. Now, by the way, with regard to priests delegating certain ministries, it is not balanced that the priest should be spending his time at a computer, at a desk and in meetings, and delegating sacerdotal roles to lay people, almost exclusively. The people who are housebound need the priest. The people in hospital need the priest, because to give Holy Communion each time automatically is not necessarily what they need, and could actually damage their soul. I know, because I've been there, in the sense that you go around in Italy and they might tell you, I was obliged to receive Holy Communion, but I wanted absolution first. They have the instinct out there. It's forcing their conscience. And also, not even a deacon can anoint. These three sacraments go together in the ministry to the sick. And I was always telling them in Italy, sometimes crying at them from the pulpit, call us first! accursed! They were always calling us to anoint a corpse or pray with the person who was dead. Many will die without receiving it, being thereby deprived of innumerable graces, consolation, and strength in the great leap from time to eternity. The sacrament of matrimony, which symbolizes the union of Christ with the Church, will be thoroughly attacked and profaned. Masonry, then reigning, will implement iniquitous laws aimed at extinguishing this sacrament. Does that sound familiar? They will make it easy for all to live in sin, thus multiplying the birth of illegitimate children without the Church's blessing. There's a lodge just opposite the door, as you know. Secular education will contribute to a scarcity of priestly and religious vocations. Now, we see a pattern emerging there. It's a little parenthesis. In the Latin Mass, which I have on a Sunday, you can see easily that what has always worked will still work. Big families, much grace, good formation, reverence, making sure that the sacraments are well received, it has an effect. And big families are generous with regard to vocations. And you put a child next to the altar and leave him there, plenty of things to do, but leave him there without too much noise, the Lord will do the rest. And it's a victory, by the way, and the Vatican knows it, and they were quite hesitant about the question when they yielded eventually to allowing girls to serve. They were warning, that's probably going to take away from our vocations. And it's just what's happened. To be delivered from the slavery of these heresies, those whom the merciful love of my Son has destined for this restoration will need great willpower, perseverance, courage, and confidence in God. To try the faith and trust of these just ones, there will be times when all will seem lost and paralyzed. It will then be the happy beginning of the complete restoration. Now, you know that Padre Pio did actually say, when questioned, yes, the Blessed Virgin was appearing in Garabandal, and what comes through there is also parallel to a lot of this. In fact, almost word for word with Akita. Priests against, or rather bishops against bishops, and cardinals against cardinals, and also many cardinals, bishops and priests were on their way to perdition and leading the flock after them. Now that, in the 60s, was terrifying and could not be understood. We know the tremendous responsibility that a pastor of a flock bears. If he's not, even by silence, giving the truth, then that's going to come back on his copybook. In those times, the atmosphere will be saturated with the spirit of impurity, which, like a filthy sea, will engulf the streets and public places with incredible license. Innocence will scarcely be found in children, or modesty in women. He who should speak seasonably will remain silent. There shall be scarcely any virgin souls in the world. The delicate flower of virginity will seek refuge in the cloisters. I was in the retreat last week in a very good cloister, and it's beautiful to see heaven and earth touching with the earthly angels close to the heavenly angels, adoration all day and all night, and beautiful liturgy, every word sung, not a thing spared. Without virginity, fire from heaven will be needed to purify these lands. Sects, having permeated all social classes, will find ways of introducing themselves into the very heart of homes to corrupt the innocence of children. The children's hearts will be dainty morsels to regale the devil. Religious communities will remain to sustain the church and work with courage for the salvation of souls. The secular clergy will fall far short of what is expected of them because they will not pursue their sacred duty. Losing the divine compass, they will stray from the way of priestly ministry mapped out for them by God and will become devoted to money, seeking it too earnestly. Pray constantly, implore tirelessly, and weep bitter tears in the seclusion of your heart, beseeching the Eucharistic heart of my most holy Son to take pity on his ministers and to end as soon as possible these unhappy times by sending to his church a prelate who shall restore the spirit of her priests. This is dating from the period of, essentially, the revolt of Protestantism. It's the voice of truth, it's the voice of the Alpha and the Omega, handed on by Our Lady in his name. Outside time, warning us for our time. Where does it leave us? We can only do what is in our power to do, but that we must do. The Rosary well said, and I mean well said, not rushed, not overlapped, every day. Holy Communion received with great devotion and preparation. Confession received well and often, avoiding wastage of time, abuse of means of communication, including cybersphere and all that goes with it, and in short, consoling Jesus there where he is most hurt, in the host. Today I only have small hosts because I forgot to put the large one in, but it's quite valid, and when we think about the way that it was celebrated in prison camps, this is perfectly okay.